All right, let's jump right into this explainer and decode the absolute apex of legends. Welcome to the Explainer, where we break down the hidden structures of myth. Today, we aren't just looking at your run-of-the-mill monsters. Oh no, we are diving into the ultimate power rankings across world folklore to see who truly wears the crown. What's that X factor that elevates a creature from a mere beast to an absolute, undisputed sovereign? Let's find out. So before we start climbing this cosmic ladder, we really have to ask ourselves, what actually separates a monster from a mythic sovereign? I mean, how does a creature go from just being driven by blind animal instinct to wielding literal world-shaping authority? In pretty much every mythology out there, you've got your base-level creatures, right? But then you have the apex predators, the rulers. So what exactly draws that line?
Well, it basically comes down to the feral beast versus the calculating sovereign. And this comparison brilliantly illustrates our core theme here. True alpha status, it's not just about raw muscle or big teeth. It's about refined intellect, absolute control, and just unyielding willpower. Moving up to sovereign status almost always means leaving behind that feral chaos and insatiable hunger. Instead, it's a shift toward iron discipline, deep strategy, and total mental supremacy.
Let's open up Section 1, Undead and Bestial Monarchs, the Nightmare Rulers. We're going to start right here on the ground with the terrestrial hunters of pop culture, where age, patience, and sheer dominance forge this first tier of mythic alphas. Just think about the staggering difference between a fledgling vampire and an elder vampire. I mean, wow. While fledglings are completely limited by instinct and this insatiable hunger, elder vampires have spent centuries, sometimes literally millennia, perfecting this terrifying aristocratic precision. A fledgling is going to rip and tear, but an elder vampire, they don't even need to bare their fangs. They possess this incredible mental domination, controlling human minds with just eye contact. It's crazy. Their polished, eerily beautiful exterior totally masks a calculated predatory nature that makes the very air bend to their will. And then, we have the raw, untamed fury of the werewolf. But consider the traits of the alpha werewolf here. They earn their dominance not just through immense strength or towering size, though the glowing eyes and transformative bite definitely help, but through a commanding presence that bows the entire pack to its will. Actually, some legends even speak of true alphas. These are super rare individuals who achieve this leadership not through violence at all, but through pure, unbreakable willpower and character. Moving up to the absolute apex of dark magic, we hit lichdom. Now, a standard lich is terrifying enough, right? It's a dark sorcerer who literally rips out their own soul and hides it in a phylactery just to cheat death. But an archlich? They take this so much further. They perfect this forbidden ritual to achieve absolute command over death, raising vast undead armies to reshape kingdoms to their own horrific vision. They aren't just scheming in the shadows. They possess a mastery over dark magic that is capable of tearing reality apart and cursing entire lands. All right, that brings us to Section 2, Sovereigns of the Mystical or Ethereal Supremacy. Here, we're shifting our focus away from physical domination and moving into arcane and spiritual authority. Let's compare a mischievous sprite to a true fairy monarch. While common fae are usually these small, playful tricksters, fairy kings and queens, think Oberon and Titania, are towering, incredibly unpredictable sovereigns. Their mere words can literally alter fate. They can bind you to ironclad magical contracts, kind of like supernatural NDAs if you think about it, and command nature itself. They demand immediate respect. They're totally capable of rewarding loyalty with unimaginable wealth or punishing disrespect with a terrifying equal intensity. Now, following the timeline of the Tenko, the Japanese fox spirit is fascinating. It takes a staggering 1,000 years of spiritual growth to transcend earthly limits and become a celestial nine-tailed Tenko. An ordinary yokai has to grow in wisdom, literally gaining extra tails as milestones over the centuries, until it finally reaches that exalted nine-tailed state. And at that point, it's a being of radiant golden beauty, a celestial entity that brings blessings, but, always keeps its true, unfathomable intentions hidden. Across global folklore, we see this ethereal authority take so many cool forms. You've got the High Elves with their ancient arcane lore, blending sword and spell with impossible grace. Then, contrast them with the Daitengu of Japan. These aren't brutes, they are terrifying mountain intellects that pass judgment, testing arrogance, and punishing the foolish. In Islamic tradition, you've got the untamable Merid, which are these giant elemental jinn and forces of chaos. And Japanese lore also warns of the Kijin, sacred, wrathful guardians who use their monstrous appearance strictly to enforce divine law. And now the scale physically explodes as we enter Section 3, Titans of Raw Power, the Colossal Forces. We are talking about ancient, unrestrained entities that press against civilization itself. The really fascinating twist here is when we look at the savage Cyclops, like Polyphemus from the Odyssey throwing sheep around, versus the divine craftsman. The true Alpha Cyclopes aren't just savage brutes. They are the literal builders of divine power. These master craftsmen armed the Greek gods themselves. They forged Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helmet of invisibility. Their alpha status is deeply rooted in this staggering creative power, which just goes to show you that invention often completely trumps sheer brute force. Then, oh man, we have the Hecatoncheires, or the hundred-handed ones. These are the apex giants of Greek myth, possessing 50 heads and 100 hands. Born of the sky and earth, these beings were so overwhelmingly terrifying that even their own father, Uranus, locked them away deep within Tartarus. But they ended up becoming the unstoppable engines of war the Olympians desperately needed. I mean, with 50 heads and 100 hands, they function like living mythological artillery, just hurling massive boulders in a constant rain of devastation to defeat the Titans. And this idea of being older than the gods themselves is absolutely crucial. Take the North Frost Giants, or Jötnar. Born from the very first giant, Ymir, they represent this ancient, freezing force of chaos. Even after the gods built the world from Ymir's remains, which is a crazy story on its own, the Frost Giants survived. They serve as the eternal rival to the gods' order. They are this ever-present pressure against civilization, completely destined to clash with the gods at the end of the world in Ragnarok. Now we've finally reached the absolute peak of the ladder with Section 4, Cosmic and Divine Rulers. Let's look at the architects of reality. At this tier, we find the cosmic extremes, the purest expressions of spiritual authority. On one hand, you have the seraphim. These are the six-winged burning attendants of divine glory, defined by ultimate purity and untouchable devotion, and they are contrasted perfectly by the demon lords. You have to understand, these guys aren't mindless beasts. They are ancient, highly organized emperors of infernal corruption. They literally run dark bureaucracies, commanding entire legions and tempting mortals with forbidden knowledge. It's so cool how dragon alphas diverge across different cultures. Just think about the celestial dragon versus the ancient dragon. Chinese celestial dragons sustain cosmic order above the clouds, guarding heavenly palaces and bringing balance. But then, in stark contrast, you have ancient beasts like the Norse Nidhogg, gnawing at the roots of reality itself. These dragons are tied to cataclysm. They're so old they basically function as living laws of nature, way older than human memory, acting as these foundational forces of destruction. And looking at the primordial genesis, at the very beginning of absolutely everything, sit the primordial deities. We start with the void, or chaos, moving into concepts given form, like Nyx, Gaia, and Uranus, leading up to the birth of the gods. These primordials don't just rule a kingdom, they literally are the kingdom. They represent the raw structure of reality, before stories, before laws, or before the familiar gods even existed. So, after exploring hundred-handed titans, world-eating dragons, and primordial voids that literally embody the universe, we have to ask a very grounding question. What power could possibly stand against these forces? What could possibly counter these living laws of reality? Well, the answer brings us to a sudden, deeply grounding shift in our hierarchy. Section 5, the mortal counterweight, the hero. This is all about power through endurance, not divinity. Unlike gods who are just born with inherent majesty and effortless magic, heroes begin as flawed, fearful mortals. Their true power isn't a magical spell, and it definitely isn't having 100 hands. It is simply their unyielding choice to take one more step forward when reality completely falls apart around them. Just look at the hero's burden. They begin as a mortal, but they stand right on the razor's edge between civilization and chaos. Whether they're battling dragons or descending into the underworld, they succeed through sacrifice and sheer will. Their earned victories prove that greatness doesn't require a divine bloodline. It turns human struggle into legend. It requires pure human willpower, which is honestly something we all possess. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward anyway. This quote perfectly encapsulates why human beings created these sprawling, terrifying mythologies in the first place. We dreamed up archliches and primordial voids to give our own mortal struggles profound cosmic meaning. The hero archetype takes our daily human endurance and literally transforms it into legend.
So what is your mythic alpha energy? As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to consider how human willpower has historically been written to stand toe-to-toe with gods and monsters. Look at the challenges you're enduring today. Are you approaching them with the calculating precision of a sovereign, or maybe the unyielding, gritty forward momentum of the hero? Figure out your mythic alpha energy. Find it, harness it, and use it to conquer your own world.